morning, good evening, good day. Just a moment, I'm just clicking on to. Hi everyone, this is Kate. I'm just coming on to awakeningtogether.org and welcome. It's lovely to be here with you all. I'm also recording this as a video and I'll be putting it up onto my YouTube channel under the name Kate Greaves. So just might do a few minutes meditation just to start with. So if you're joining in, maybe you could just join in for a few minutes and just close your eyes and get still. And just allow your fingers to soften. Just allow your toes to soften. Just feel your body relax. Let your face relax. Lips and tongue and eyes, throat, shoulders, just feel the body heavy in your chair or lying down. And I'll do a short prayer. Holy Spirit, I give you everything of me. You are the wisdom. You are the one mind that knows the correction to any misperceptions I have. You can, if I trust you, you can steer me very gently. I need to be willing to trust. In each moment, when I take back the reins and I try to do it my way, I gently remember to put you in charge again. I put you in charge of all my decisions. I sit quietly and wait for the answers. And those answers might take a while. But I rest and I wait willingly. I give myself to you. I give myself to your truth, the truth, and I allow it into my mind. I allow it to replace all egoic thoughts. I allow the love within to speak for me. I allow your wisdom to guide me in everything I do and say. I just surrender to you. You will show me a different way. You will help me see everything differently. I just have to be willing to stop and pause and wait and ask you, help me see this differently. I must be aware that there are so many ways of seeing a situation, and that the way I might be perceiving it is not true if I am upset or not in peace. So I give up my perception and I ask for correction. I ask for guidance, and I trust that that guidance is for my mind. It's to help my mind change, to forgive, to overlook, to see the situation or the person differently, so that I can be peaceful, so that my mind joins your mind in its peaceful view, and that I awaken to this love within. Amen. Thank you. It's really beautiful. Those prayers or that meditation is one I do, different variants, different variations, but the sentiment behind it is to constantly keep my mind surrendered. That's the intention. I have to, if the mind that I live in, if I want to stay in peace, I need to be surrendered. I need to be having a mind that doesn't know the answer, so that the answer can come in. So I don't really know each day when I come onto this show what I'm going to do, what I'm going to say. Sometimes things are coming in to my mind as I sit down, but we're guided by Jesus in the Course in Miracles to not plan, and that the plan will be given to us as we open and trust. And so this is me demonstrating that. And I guess when we listen to spiritual teachers, we're not just listening to their words. We're listening to the demonstration of the results of peace and trust and surrender. It's funny, when I first started seriously on this spiritual journey, I came across some minds that were very well versed in the Course in Miracles and they had great memories, and they would do some teachings, and I thought they were enlightened. Because I was very new to the path. I studied the Course in Miracles for 14 years on my own. I didn't tell anyone, I just did it. I didn't listen to anyone else. I didn't listen to any other teachers or read any other books. I just studied the Course. I found that I wanted a connection with what the message was, and I was worried that someone might distort the message. If I started reading a book, I'd get someone else's interpretation. But actually what did happen was, when I did eventually go to study groups and read books, it was very, very helpful. So I think I was led at the right time. So it's interesting, because Spirit will guide you at times to stop everything, to stop listening to teachers, to stop reading so much. Maybe might guide you back to just one book, or maybe just guide you to meditate more. You will feel into your guidance. You will just feel, you know what, I'm feeling to just get more quiet. I'm feeling to not maybe get on Facebook as much. And you will get a sense. Sometimes in my journey I've been guided off to stop posting or to stop reading, and just trusting in that. And it's been for periods of time. And there's been great realizations throughout those times. And I think what I'm pointing to is that your path is your path. And the most important thing for you is to follow your inner guidance and trust that. And I had a teacher, even though he didn't know he was my teacher. I just watched him on YouTube. And I watched hundreds of hours, and eventually I had to give up that teacher. I had to drop him. Spirit guided me to drop the guru but keep following the teachers, because I wasn't even aware I had an aspect that he had some inner guidance that I didn't. And there can come that aspect on the path that your teacher has got a clearer channel to God or to truth than you do. And that has to be gone past. We all have a clear channel. Every mind has got the awareness of this love. It is there now for us. We are actually all got blocks in our minds, but we have got this awareness of perfect oneness, which is the awakened state. That is there for everyone. It is there right now. So it's a sort of funny paradox that we're all completely enlightened now. And when I say we are all, it's an awareness of perfect oneness. That's what awakening is. So, as you hear a lot of people say, oh, someone's just said, if you meet the Buddha on the path, ignore him. I think that teaching is what I've sort of just alluded to, was learn, sit at the Buddha's feet, devote yourself to the teachings, but then drop the Buddha, drop the teachings. As he says in the Course in Miracles, come to God with empty hands. So we are all awake right now. So I'll just tell you a little story about what happened with me in the last week, which this is what I'm discussing about, what Jesus calls the awareness, the blocks to the awareness of love. So God is perfect love. That's what God is. God's not some man in the sky. It's not some entity that's punishing us. God is perfect love. So if you can see that the state of mind that is loving, so how can a state of mind be just perfect love? Because when we're awake, we're joined with the mind of God. So we're joined with the mind of perfect love. So the blocks are the thoughts, the judgments, the guilt, the fear. They are all thoughts. He says in the Course that the ego is a fear thought, and a fear thought is a judgment thought. Now, how do we remove those blocks? Because what's stopping you listening to me right now? What's stopping you from being in a state or having a mind that is just open-heartedly loving to all? What is stopping you is the judgment and the guilt, and a lot of it's unconscious. And so we think that this is a difficult task, but really it just takes a lot of willingness. And I'm just sharing from my perspective. That's all I'm ever sharing from. And to be willing to have those blocks removed is what Jesus calls us. We have the voice for God, we have the comforter, there is a helper, the Holy Spirit. It's a part of the mind, the right mind, the sane mind, the awakened mind, that is helping us. So while we're in our deluded mind, while we're in our egoic mind, which has its thoughts, the egoic mind is like a bubble. If you can imagine a bubble, and inside that big bubble are all the thoughts of separation, guilt, fear, a story, full of stories. And we're slowly removing each of those. Sometimes you could imagine a brick wall, and each brick is a judgment or an upset or something from your past. As he says, we see only the past. Our minds can't sit in the present moment clearly in absolute peace, the peace that passeth understanding. Our mind can't sit there because it's got its judgments and its fears. And those thoughts come in randomly all the time. It's like autopilot. As he says in the Course, the ego always speaks first. So just getting back to my point earlier about on my journey when I first started, I came across some other minds that were very able to speak clearly these Course principles and concepts, and that anyone that was very clear and quite confident of how they spoke the Course principles, I thought they were enlightened. But what I came to see was, as I got to know the mind a little bit more, was that those speaking of those Course concepts was a defence against actually practicing what we've been asked to do. And so I came to be aware that it's much easier to read the Course, hear what it says, and parrot its message off to others than to actually practice this forgiveness and actually get down on our knees and be humble and surrender and say, I don't know what this truth is. And to be radically honest with where we're at in our minds. And it's okay to do that. That's what's being asked for. We are really asked to come with trust, full trust. And sometimes our relationships with family and friends are the closest people around us, are the ones that are the relationships that will help us undo the blocks. And so many, many years of resentment. Maybe haven't spoken to someone for many years and you say, I'll never forgive that person. It's very easy to, I've seen course principles used to not do this forgiveness. So we need to just go inside our own minds and find where we're justifying. And you'll know it. You'll feel that uncomfortableness. You'll know yourself, what you're holding on to and what you don't want to change. And there could be some fear about changing. Well, I can imagine there'd be a lot of fear. So coming to the atonement, which is the correction of all our judgments, and allowing the Holy Spirit, the sane mind, to slowly correct it, means we have to be willing to bring each and every judgment of ours to the altar and lay it there and say, I have these terrible judgments on this person and I am believing I'm right. And I was, interestingly enough, I was sharing with a new friend. I've just moved about 2 hours from where I used to live. I'm renting a house down near the beach in Melbourne, Australia. And I've got one friend that lives down here, and she's one of her friends I've got to know. And we went to the beach yesterday for a couple of hours and sat and talked, and I listened to him for maybe, I don't know, half an hour to an hour, just listened and just held the space. And then what happened was I just started spontaneously sharing from something in the past that seemed to be very helpful for him. And that was, I've shared before about it. It was around all the forgiveness I had to do around my father. And I blamed my father for my situation. I blamed him. And when I say I'm talking about the egoic mind, but I'm going to be sharing in a way that might be more helpful if I say I. So I'm just going to be sharing about that. And what happened was I went to my father a few times when I was desperate, in need of financial assistance. And he said no. And my dad is very wealthy in terms of the world's view. And he has helped my sister, one sister, incredibly. She's had houses, cars, horses, horse floats. Her children have had horses and cars. Now, this whole story, I didn't know at the time, was set up for my awakening. That's how I see it now. But at the time, it was just dreadful. It was dreadful. I felt incredibly abandoned. Excuse me. And my mind was suffering so badly. I took everything very, very, very personally, and I felt completely unloved. And I tried to commit suicide eventually, and it happened many times. And I took some tablets. I didn't even write a note because I didn't think anyone would care enough for a note. That's to the extent of where my mind was at. I was at probably the lowest, one of the lowest points in my life. And the reason I was sharing that with my friend was his daughter had committed suicide 12 months ago. And I was suggesting something that we could do on the anniversary of that. And I just asked him, I'd like to be with him on that day, and I'd like to maybe go somewhere with him, go up a mountain, go look at some trees, some flowers. And I just asked him what he would like to do. And I don't even know him very well, but felt guided by spirit to offer that. And I did share with him, and I did say to him, this wanting to die is the mind that wants to commit suicide is fully an egoic mind and has got no way out. It's like the walls close in. And I've heard people share, it's very selfish of that person, and I could never ever see that, because the suffering that goes on, it's like hell. The ego's mind is hell. And he says in the Course, the ego is a death wish. So when I came seriously back to the Course, and I thought, I know what this ego mind's like, and I want to do anything I can to change it, because the doctors and everyone else can't help me. They'll just pile me with medication. And so it was a real moment of, I want another way. And so I was sharing with him. So I had to come to sit down in my life and say, why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? So I started working deeply with the Course in Miracles properly, not just around the edges. And I think this is what we do with any spiritual path. It doesn't need to be the Course. If you're on reading another book that's helpful, or in Buddhism, or whatever you're into, just what it takes is a complete devotion. So there's a lesson in the Course I think it's lesson, I'm not going to guess because I can't remember, so it's I want the peace of God. And that's really it. It's that I want this other way more than I want anything else. And that devotion to the atonement has to come before anything. It has to come before I want a partner to love me. I want this, I want that, because they're all something in the world. When you have the peace of God, when you have the peace of mind, you have everything, absolutely everything. You can be anywhere, anytime, with anyone. Doesn't matter what's going on in this world. You have this stillness. You have this peace. This is the peace that passes understanding. And it takes great willingness to say, I'm wrong. I want another way. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes. And so I went on a journey where I asked the Holy Spirit and Jesus at times to join me and come into my mind. And above all else, I want to see this differently. That was really the mantra. Because the way I was seeing things was causing me a lot of suffering. So I surrendered my view. And I just humbled myself. And it was a sort of journey of lots of ups and downs, lots of failures, but it was never a failure in a way, because he says we can't judge our path. I felt at times I'd fallen back into judgment. But that's the thing, is we have to catch ourselves when we do. And that's all it takes, is the willingness to say, I'm out of peace. I must have judged something. I must have a thought of separation. There must be something, some thoughts that are causing me to feel separate. So last week, well, first of all, I'll just share that since I had the awakening 2.5 years ago, what happened in that moment was the commentary, that background commentary of judgment left my mind completely. So it brought in this quietness that hadn't been there before. And that was very surprising, the stillness and the quietness. It was beautiful, and it's still there. So I'm so grateful. And I did go through a lot of fear on my journey back to God's mind. But what I realise is that unless I'm vigilant, this peace will leave. But not vigilance in the term that I have to be on guard all the time. It's not that sort of vigilance. And it was never that vigilance where you're walking around all day saying, oh, what thought am I having about? It's just a vigilance of devotion to being aware of how I'm feeling, because sometimes the feelings will indicate that there's thoughts there that are judgment thoughts. And if I had some situations happening around me, and there was someone on Facebook writing some things, and I was sharing from a higher perspective that their judgments of some other spiritual Course in Miracles teachers, I was sharing and had privately messaged a friend of mine saying, this situation you're what you're experiencing, the judgments that are coming through you, through your mind, you can use this to look at. You can use this as an opportunity to undo whatever the cause is. This is actually where you practice the course. It's not about reading the course, it's about practicing this. So he said to me, "You're trying to silence me." And I was a bit saddened by that, because I then suddenly always reminded that it's much easier to hold a judgment. And what happens is, as we turn into this spiritual path, the ego will then turn on spiritual teachers and spiritual groups, and it will then use its judgment on that. So this is why we have to be vigilant, because the egoic mind will use anything it can to maintain its righteousness, that I'm right, you're wrong, and this needs to change. And that's when it gets harder and harder. And that's why the devotion and the vigilance needs to be ramped up. And we need to maintain this quietness, and that we go within and not without. And it doesn't matter, even if you do post something on Facebook and it seems a bit of a rant. It's just for you. It's for you to undo something further if you're willing to look at it. And it's not wrong. You haven't embarrassed yourself, because ultimately there is no self. So it's just another level of things to be undone in your mind. There's more, there's something from the past. And it's sort of like we're okay to look at certain things, but then we think that when other judgments come up, that's okay, because that's all around. So it's like the ego uses, it will find excuses for its judgments. And this is where the dedicated spiritual student, which is the dedicated spiritual student, this is where the fork in the road is. If you want the peace of God above all else, you will use every single judgment your mind has to come to God, to come to the Holy Spirit and say, please help me see this differently. What is in my past that's causing me to have a judgment on this person? And that's all I was pointing this person to. And so anyway, my mind was very clear. It was loving. It was not biting into anything that was being said. There was some things being said about me. And the thing that was said was that on my website there's an American address and I live in Australia. And the funny thing is when I got guided to set up my own website. And it's all the information in the website's pre-populated. So it's like there's a fake address. There's fake blogs. Everything's put in as you get on the templates. And I just happened to the address was pre-populated by the website. It's just some random address in America. And so there was talk about me being you know, untrustworthy because I'm trying to get away with something. So, but you see, this is why he says in the Course, you'll find controversy, you'll find something. And so what it is to just notice how what I see when I see others pursuing others in these spiritual talks and different things, is that it's so, what comes to mind is it's so hard to practice forgiveness. The ego mind will do anything to distract you from that. And so I was just sitting in stillness, asking for guidance. And what happened was I tried to share with these, at least one of the people that were in this little group, trying to just openly, not attack, because it might look like an attack, but who we are can't be attacked. So I was just laughing at that. But what I did see was that it's an opportunity to say that if I'm seeing something outside of me and I'm upset by it, that it's something from my past, and I can take that to the Holy Spirit in quietness. And so really everything in this journey is to take to the Holy Spirit anytime we're upset. So there was no judgment of these characters. It was just to see what the Holy Spirit showed me was that that's why I was referring back to when I first met some spiritual people, and they seemed to know the Course very well. And then it came to light that they weren't practicing that. They were just preaching it. And what was told to me and over and again is that it's too threatening to the ego to let go of its judgments. And that's where you, in quietness, if you're devoted to the peace of God above all else, and you want that peace of God, you need to be devoted to wherever you're at, whatever, every single thing your mind is going to bring up. And your mind, your egoic mind, is going to bring up many things that are different to others. And you notice when someone judges someone else and then another mind jumps on the bandwagon and seems to be agreeing with them, if you have a look deeply, you'll see that they're not. They've got different aspects of judgments and annoyance. So you'll see that the ego in each of those minds actually is annoyed or upset about something different, and he points to that in the lessons. He says that the ego can never agree. So that's something that I notice when I say you get, if you're criticising somebody, when I used to gossip and criticise, and I did before I stopped, I did notice that when I got upset with someone at work and I said to someone, oh, they're always like this and they do this, this and this, the other mind would have a slightly different upset than I did. And they'd say, oh, yes, and then when they did this, this, and they say, I think, oh, when they did that, that and that, that didn't really bother me. But when they did this, this and this, that bothered me. And so this is how we can use these particular ways of seeing that the ego's upset is different. But the Christ love within is the same. So that's why Jesus is telling us that the egos cannot agree, because each mind has its own past. and it's upset from its past. So even though it may look like two people, two minds have come together to join on an upset, they can't join. They've got a different upset. They've got a different past, and you'll notice it. And so that's why you'll notice. That'll be the clear indication that you're in an ego judgment, when you realise that no one else is agreeing with your perspective. It might be a little bit the same, but it'll be different. And it's not to say you're wrong or right. We're on a journey to awakening. We're going to use all these things in our mind to heal our mind. We're going to go to the Holy Spirit. So it's a gift. So thank you for showing me where I've got something else to heal, because I'm going with the peace of God. So I'm not guilty, because I'm never guilty, because who I am is guiltless. Who I am is this magnificent, holy, amazing, changeless, eternal mind of God that is untouchable, unthreatenable. Who I am is the most magnificent, lovely, beautiful light of the world. That's who I am in truth. But while I've got judgments, I'm not going to make myself guilty, because they're not my judgments. As he says in the Course, these are not my thoughts. They're just thoughts. They're just judgments. And we need to say, okay, I've got a judgment. I'm going to take this to the Holy Spirit, and I'm going to give it to the Holy Spirit. So I give you this judgment. I give you this fear. Help me see this differently. And if I'm really honest that I want the peace of God, I'll look at it. Now, looking at it, so I'll just tell you what happened to me. So I was fine with what was going on. And then one morning I woke up about a week or so ago, and I had a judgment on these guys and girls, maybe, I don't know who they were. They're not even there. They're something that brought my mind back into a judgment. So I went, okay. I couldn't feel the peace, the absolute peace that I had in my mind the day before. So my dedication is to my peace of mind. That's all I need to be dedicated to, is accepting the atonement. I need my mind corrected straight away, or else I live in the suffering mind again, and I don't want to go back there. So I sat down and I meditated. I read some of the Course. I always find writing out my judgments, writing out what's in my mind, the best thing, so I can get really clear on what's coming in. And then I did the Bar and Katie, the work on the major themes. And then I rang up a friend and shared about what was coming up. And then I laughed. That's what he says. It's a tiny mad idea. I'm separate. So I went into the tiny mad idea, and my mind did shift out of peace. But it then shifted back. And so what happened, what I'd like to share, is that in that moment, in that day when I was out of peace, I had no awareness of the peace of God. It was completely gone. It was like shut out completely in terms of the clarity and the wisdom. I still had a sense of peace, but not the peace of God that passes understanding. There was some peace there. So it was really strange, because that hasn't happened to my mind for such a long time. And I shared about it in all my groups and everywhere I could, because my devotion is to be totally honest about my journey. And it was helpful for a lot of people to see that. But I said to them, within a day or two, I'd shifted back And well, it had gone, it had vanished, it had dissolved. So all I need to do is to say I'm wrong and ask for guidance. And the guidance came in to meditate, to quieten my mind, to not involve in any more conversations about what was going on, and to drop it, and to be the love that I am again, and just love. And yeah, what was coming up for me was a bit of disappointment that that other minds can't or won't practice this forgiveness. And then I had to be, you know, like Byron Katie says, I look forward to people not practicing forgiveness. I look forward to minds not practicing, and that's just in the script. So once I come to that, I can drop into this. That's okay. That's all right. And the fear, I remember how fearful it was for me to be wrong when I had a judgment on a spiritual teacher at one stage, and I immediately corrected it. And I said, all I can see is innocence. And it's not my job to do anything. My job is to be directed by the Holy Spirit and be guided by the Holy Spirit in love. Love. That's all. I'm guided to be loving. So I'll just read a little bit of lesson 46. God is the love in which I forgive. I've got 3 minutes. God does not forgive because he has never condemned, and there must be condemnation before forgiveness is necessary. Forgiveness is the great need of this world, for that is because it is a world of illusions. Those who forgive are thus releasing themselves from illusions. The illusion is that I'm separate, while those who withhold forgiveness are binding themselves to them. As you condemn only yourself, so do you forgive only yourself. So in other words, when I forgive, I join my brother in our oneness, and my mind's in the love with him. Yet although God does not forgive, his love is nevertheless the basis of forgiveness. Fear condemns and love forgives. Forgiveness thus undoes what fear has produced, returning the mind to the awareness of God. For this reason, forgiveness can truly be called salvation. I always sometimes put enlightenment in where it says salvation. But it is the means by which illusions disappear. So illusions disappear. The illusion of separateness disappears because judgments keep us separate. They keep an I in place, a sense of me here and someone else over there doing something. So that's, anyway, time's up. My topic today is being vigilant for the Holy Spirit. And I thank you, and I'll pass the mic back. And I love you, I honour you, and I bless you, and thank you for listening to me. Thank you. Good night.